Picture stepping outside at 7 in the morning, the air already thick enough to drink, heat shimmering off the pavement before the sun has fully climbed. The smell of salt drifting in from the ocean, mixed with motor oil, cut grass, and the sweet bite of Cuban coffee from the window of a corner cafeteria. Somewhere down the block, a radio plays a song with a beat that makes your hips move before your brain catches up. This wasn't just any city. This was Miami in the 1980s, when the colors were brighter, the nights were longer, and the whole place felt like it was racing towards something nobody could quite name. For those who lived it, Miami back then wasn't a postcard. It was loud, sweaty, dangerous, beautiful, and alive in a way that's almost impossible to explain to anyone who wasn't there. If you grew up in 1980s Miami, get ready. These memories are going to take you right back. The heat was the first thing. The heat was everything. You didn't fight it, you surrendered to it. From May to October, the air wrapped around you like a wet wool blanket the second you walked out the door. Your shirt stuck to your back before you reached the car. The vinyl seats burned the backs of your legs, and you learned to drape a towel over them or hover an inch above until the air conditioning kicked in, if your car even had it. Plenty didn't. You drove with all four windows down, one arm hanging out, the wind doing nothing but moving the hot air around. At home, if you were lucky, there was a window unit rattling in one room, the room everyone crowded into. Otherwise, it was ceiling fans, oscillating fans, screen doors propped open, and the desperate prayer for an afternoon thunderstorm. And those storms came. Every single afternoon in summer, the sky would darken to a bruised purple, the wind would pick up, and the rain would fall in sheets so heavy you couldn't see across the street. 20 minutes later, it was over. The sun back out, the streets steaming, and that smell, that warm, wet concrete and tropical green smell rising up everywhere. You didn't complain about the heat. It was just Miami. It slowed everyone down, made everyone a little more patient, and somehow made the cold beer and the cold pool and the cold air conditioning feel like the greatest luxuries on earth. Then there were the colors. Lord, the colors. Miami in the 80s didn't do beige. It did flamingo pink and turquoise and lime green and electric blue. The Art Deco hotels along the beach, faded and crumbling at the start of the decade, slowly got their fresh coats of pastel paint, their neon signs buzzing back to life one by one. Buildings looked like birthday cakes. Cars came in white and red, but also in colors that seemed to glow. Everyone wore pastels too, the men in linen jackets with the sleeves pushed up, t-shirts underneath, no socks. The women in bright dresses, big earrings, bigger hair. You teased that hair as high as it would go, locked it in place with half a can of Aquanet, and walked out the door looking like you owned the night. The neon was the soul of the city after dark. Pink and blue tubes humming over every bar, motel, and diner, reflecting in puddles, glowing against the palm trees. When the sun went down and the lights came on, the whole city turned into something out of a dream. It looked like the future. It felt like the future. And television only made it bigger, because the whole country was watching a show about cops in pastel suits driving fast cars through these exact streets. And suddenly the whole world wanted to look like Miami, dress like Miami, be Miami. For those of us who actually lived here, it was strange and wonderful to watch the place we called home become the coolest city on the planet. The cars were a religion. On a Friday or Saturday night, you cruised down Collins Avenue, down Ocean Drive, down Calle Ocho. You rolled slow with the windows down and the stereo up, seeing and being seen. Convertibles with the top down, the bass thumping so hard you could feel it in your chest from 3 cars away. Guys spent every dollar they had on rims, on paint, on a sound system worth more than the car itself. You'd pull up at a red light next to someone, nod, rev the engine, and the light would turn green and you'd both take off like it meant something. The gas was cheap, the nights were warm, and there was nowhere you actually needed to be. The cruising was the destination. You'd end up at a drive-in, at a burger spot, at the beach parking lot, leaning against the hood with your friends, music spilling out of a dozen different cars, everyone young and broke and absolutely certain that this was the best time to be alive. But here's what people who never lived here don't understand about Miami in the 80s. It wasn't really an American city, not the way other American cities were. It was something new. Walk down certain streets and you'd hear more Spanish than English. The radio stations, the billboards, the shop signs, half of them in Spanish. This was the decade Miami became the capital of Latin America without ever leaving the United States. Little Havana wasn't a tourist attraction back then. It was a living, breathing neighborhood where old men sat at folding tables outside playing dominoes for hours, slamming the tiles down, arguing about politics and baseball in Cuba, always Cuba. The cigar smoke hung in the air. The coffee never stopped flowing. You'd walk past a ventanita, a little walk-up window, and order a cafecito, that tiny thimble of espresso so sweet and so strong it could wake the dead, and you'd knock it back standing on the sidewalk and feel your heart kick into a higher gear. Croquetas, pastelitos still warm from the oven, a medianoche sandwich pressed flat and golden. The food was incredible, and it was everywhere, and it was cheap. For many families, this was home now, a home built out of memory and longing for an island 90 miles away that most of them could never go back to. And in 1980, that world changed again. That spring and summer, more than 100,000 people arrived from Cuba in a matter of months, crossing the water in anything that would float. The Mariel boat lift. Overnight, the city swelled. Tent cities went up. The Orange Bowl filled with people who had nowhere else to go. Some Miamians were frightened, some were furious, some opened their arms. Families took in cousins they had never met. Churches and community centers handed out food and clothes and blankets. It was chaos, and it was heartbreak, and it was hope all tangled together. Thousands of people stepping onto American soil with nothing but the shirts on their backs and a desperate determination to build a life. Many of them did exactly that. They took the hardest jobs, washing dishes, laying tile, cutting lawns in that brutal heat, and slowly, over years, they clawed their way up. That was Miami in the 80s, a city of people starting over, a city where almost everyone had come from somewhere else, carrying a story of leaving everything behind. And that shared experience of starting from zero ran underneath everything like a current. The music was the heartbeat. You could not escape it, and you did not want to. The conga drums, the timbales, the horns, Latin rhythms pouring out of every car and every storefront. This was the city that gave the world the Miami sound, that fusion of Cuban rhythm and American pop that made everyone get up and dance. There was a local girl, the daughter of immigrants, who was singing with a band that started out playing weddings and quinceañeras. And by the middle of the decade, she was famous all over the world, and every kid in Miami felt like they knew her, like her success was their success too. And then there was freestyle, that electronic dance music with the drum machines and the heartbroken lyrics, the soundtrack to every teenage romance in the city. You would hear it at the roller rink, at the school dance, blasting from the boombox somebody carried on their shoulder down the beach. The clubs came alive after midnight and did not stop until the sun came up, dancing until you were soaked through, the bass rattling your bones, the whole crowd moving like one body. Miami did not sleep. Miami danced. The beach was a different world entirely back then. South Beach today is glamorous, all expensive restaurants and velvet ropes. But in the early 80s, it was faded and quiet and mostly forgotten. The grand old Art Deco hotels were run down, paint peeling, and the neighborhood was full of elderly retirees who'd come down from up north to live out their days in the sun. You'd see them sitting in folding chairs on the porches of those crumbling hotels in the shade, fanning themselves, watching the world go by. There was something gentle and sad and beautiful about it. The beach itself was wide and empty and free. You'd spend all day there. No money, no plan, just the sand and the warm green water and your friends. You'd burn, peel, and burn again because nobody wore sunscreen the way they should have. You'd come home with sand and everything, salt crusted in your hair, exhausted in the best possible way. And slowly, over the decade, the artists and the dreamers started showing up, seeing something in those old buildings that everyone else had missed, and the whole place began to wake back up. But for a while there, the beach belonged to the old folks and the kids, and it was perfect. Now, there's no telling the honest story of Miami in the 1980s without talking about the money and where a lot of it came from. This was the decade Miami got rich fast, and not all of it was clean. The whole world knew it. There was a flood of cash moving through the city that built skyscrapers, bought mansions, and filled the marinas with boats that nobody seemed to have a real job to pay for. The danger was real. There were stretches when the city felt like it was holding its breath, when the nightly news was grim, when certain neighborhoods you simply didn't go to after dark. Families talked about it in low voices. The violence touched everyone in some way, even if only as a shadow at the edge of things. And yet, here's the strange truth that people who lived through it will tell you. Life went on. Kids still rode their bikes. Mothers still hung the laundry. Old men still played dominoes. You went to work. You went to church. You went to the beach. The ordinary, everyday Miami. The Miami of backyard barbecues and little league games and Sunday dinners that lasted 4 hours. That Miami never stopped, no matter what was happening in the headlines. People are remarkably good at building normal lives in the middle of extraordinary times. That was Miami in the 1980s. Beauty and danger living side by side, and you learned to hold both at once. The family table was the center of it all. Sunday meant gathering, and gathering meant food, and food meant noise. 3 generations crammed around a table built for 8, talking over each other, laughing, arguing, the kids running underfoot. There was always too much food. Roast pork, black beans and rice, fried plantains, yuca with garlic and lime, and somebody's abuela in the kitchen who had been cooking since dawn and would not sit down no matter how many times you asked her to. The grown-ups drank coffee and talked about the old country. The kids waited impatiently to be excused so they could go play. The music was always on. Somebody always ended up dancing in the living room. These weren't special occasions. This was just Sunday. This was just what you did. And underneath all of it was that fierce, unspoken belief that family was everything, that no matter how hard the week had been or how far from home you had traveled, the table on Sunday would always be there, full and loud and yours. And then there were the storms. Everyone in Miami carried a quiet awareness of the sky. Hurricane season came every year, June to November, and you grew up knowing the drill. The way the air went still and strange before a big one. The runs to the store for water, batteries, and canned food, the shelves stripped bare, taping the windows in big X's, or boarding them up with plywood. The whole neighborhood out front, helping each other haul in the patio furniture, checking on the old folks down the street. And then the waiting, the family gathered together in the safest room, the radio crackling, the wind starting to howl, the rain hammering sideways. There was fear in it, but there was something else too, a togetherness. When the power went out, you lit the candles and you played cards and you told stories. And for a night, the whole frantic city slowed to a stop, and there was nothing to do but be with the people you loved and wait for morning. And when the storm passed and you stepped outside to survey the damage, the fallen branches and the flooded streets, the neighbors came out too, and you helped each other clean up, and somehow you felt closer than you had before. And then there was the everyday rhythm of it, the small ordinary things that made up a Miami childhood. The mall was air-conditioned, and that alone made it sacred. On a blazing Saturday afternoon, you would beg for a ride and spend hours just walking the polished floors with your friends, buying nothing, eating soft pretzels in the food court, hovering near the arcade, feeding quarters into the machines until your pockets were empty. There was the corner store where you would buy candy and baseball cards and a cold soda in a glass bottle. There was the ice cream truck whose song you could hear from 3 streets away, sending every kid in the neighborhood sprinting toward the curb with change clutched in sweaty fists. There were the long bike rides through quiet streets lined with banyan trees, the sprinklers you ran through, the mango tree in somebody's yard that everyone raided in summer, the fruit so ripe and heavy it dropped on its own, and you would eat it right there standing in the grass, the juice running down your arms. These were the moments that did not make the news, that nobody put on television, but they were the real Miami, the one we actually lived in. Number 17, meatloaf with tomato glaze and green beans. The nights were the thing you'd miss the most. Warm nights that never seemed to end. Sitting out on the porch or the stoop or the hood of a car, the air finally cooling just enough to be perfect. The smell of jasmine and salt, and somebody's cooking drifting on the breeze. The sound of crickets and distant music and the occasional siren. The sky glowing pink and orange from all that neon. You stay out for hours with your friends, talking about everything and nothing, about the future, about who you wanted to be. You were young in a city that felt young, both of you figuring it out as you went. Anything seemed possible. The whole world seemed to be right there, just out of reach, and you were certain that one day you'd grab it. Ask anyone who lived in Miami in the 1980s and they'll tell you the same thing. It wasn't easy. The heat was punishing. The danger was real. The city was rough around the edges and rougher in the middle. Money came and went. People came and went, and there was heartbreak woven into the beauty of the place. But it was alive. God, it was alive. There was a feeling in the air that you were living in a place that mattered, at a time that mattered, in a city reinventing itself right before your eyes. The colors, the music, the food, the ocean, the mix of every language and every culture all crammed together under that enormous tropical sky. It was loud, and it was messy, and it was unforgettable. And maybe that's why these memories hit so hard. Not because the 80s were perfect. They weren't. They were dangerous and difficult and complicated in ways we didn't always understand until later. But because Miami back then felt electric, it felt like the whole city was holding its breath and dancing at the same time. It felt like home, even to all the people who'd come from somewhere else, even to all of us who were just kids trying to grow up in the middle of it all. The cafecito on the sidewalk, the neon on the water, the conga drums, the warm nights that went on forever. It wasn't always pretty, but it was ours, and we'll never forget it. If this brought back memories, share it with someone who remembers those Miami nights. Hit subscribe to keep these stories alive. And drop a comment telling us your favorite memory of Miami in the 1980s. I love reading every single one. Until next time, hold those memories close. They're worth more than gold.